12 years ago, the news dropped about the casting for the movie adaptation of Nigerian writer Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie's novel, Half of a Yellow Sun, that is based off of the Nigerian Civil War. Everybody waited with bated breath to hear of the casting news because there was a bit of hope, a smidgen of one, that who knows? Maybe Hollywood might give a Nigerian actor, and I use the term actor in this case as a gender neutral term, their big break in starring in a production of this size. After all, director of the movie is a Nigerian, B. Bandele. But then the casting news trickled out. Thandi Newton was Olana. Chiwetel Ejiofor was Odenigbo. Anika Noni Rose was Kainene. John Boyega was Ugu. Now you might look at this list and think to yourself, well, there are two Nigerian sounding names in there, so what is this girl's problem? This girl, by the way, is called Noria. Hello. And you see, sure, Chiwetel Ejiofor and John Boyega are Nigerians, but they are also British. And the British is what matters more to Hollywood than the Nigerian. Because that way they are able to slap faces with names and claim their diversity points, even though if you were to ask any of these two actors to attempt to speak with an Igbo accent, the sky itself will fall. But I have no smoke for Chiwetel or John. I'm actually happy that they got their bags, secured that. It's all good. And the same goes for Thandi and Anika. But that's the thing, a story that is focused on the Nigerian Civil War and the impact it had on Indigbo, and how those effects still reverberate till present day, with Olana being one of the main characters and Kainene being central to the grief and the unhealed wounds and trauma of a people dealt a heavy hand by a genocide and civil war that our country refuses to acknowledge, even in the face of relatives never discovered or found in the chaos of the war. To have that story be told through the eyes of non-Igbo people, non-Nigerian, makes some of it fall flat and loses resonance. And it is even more egregious because what the casting director ended up doing was having Nigerians fill out some of the more minor roles. Genevieve Unanji, who's one of our biggest stars and has been since the early 2000s, was cast as Miss Adebayo with a total number of lines I can fit into one palm. Zach Orji, one of our veterans from the 90s, was Chief Ozobia. Onyeka Onwenu, one of our most popular musicians and actors from the 80s, was cast as Mama. We got to be background in a story that is based off of our trauma, which Hollywood gets to monetize. But Hollywood doesn't care, because Hollywood has always been about the money and about how to make things palatable to a wider audience. And if the wider audience would rather gravitate towards a known face, even if said face would not adequately address the reason for their role and how it plays within the story being told, Hollywood would not care. Because Hollywood only cares about the money. Now, I'm sure you're wondering why I've wasted your time talking about Half of a Yellow Sun and the significance of making the right casting choice, which Hollywood keeps showing time and again that they have no interest in because of profits and mass appeal, when this video is meant to be about children of blood and bone. Well, it's because yesterday the news dropped about the casting for the movie adaptation of Nigerian-American writer Tomi Adeyemi's Legacy of Orisha series, popularly known as the Children of Blood and Bone series. And of course, Hollywood did what Hollywood is wont to do. Firstly, I read this off of Entertainment Weekly's article, and let me just say that both the writer and the editor of that piece need to receive strongly worded emails, because Zelie is from Ilorin, Ilorin, and not that atrocity of a spelling they gave it. It's an actual place, the capital city of Kwara State. Because you see, Tomi just basically grabbed the map of Nigeria and tossed places around and created a fantasy land of Orisha, which some Nigerians, myself inclusive, found disrespectful as hell. But who is surprised? The writers of the West and the global North have always treated locations and areas far from them as playing ground for their fantasy stories without any care or consideration being put to how these regions are presented. Case in point, Sarah J. Maas, J. Christoph, Robin Hobb, you name it. And this, of course, bleeds into the adaptations that are then made from the stories. But I digress. Back to the casting. Thuso Mbedu gets to play Azelie. Amari is played by Amandla Stenberg. Inan will be played by Damson Idris. Tosin Cole will play Zelie's older brother Zayn. Viola Davies herself would be Mama Agba. Cynthia Erivo is Admiral Kaea. Idris Elba is Lekon. Lashana Lynch is Jumoke. Chiwetel Ejiofor, yes, the same Chiwetel from Half of a Yellow Sun is going to be yet another Nigerian book adaptation. But this time around, he will be playing King Saran. And Regina King will be Queen Nehanda. Please note how I pronounced Lekon, Jumoke, Mama Agba, because these are Yoruba names, which already I know are about to be butchered to hell because even Tomi Adeyemi herself doesn't pronounce them the way they should be. And I'm going to come to the pronunciation part of this video in a bit and why that is yet another source of worry for me because Hollywood is nothing if not consistent with butchering languages that are outside of the English language because once again, they do not care about anything else but profits. But let's start with Hollywood's consistent fear of never casting young actors when they are making an adaptation of a YA novel. Because I'm sure if you're someone who's never read the books, then you might have missed it. But Children of Blood and Bone is a young adult novel. These kids, Zelie, Amara, Inan, even Zayn, are teenagers in these books. But Hollywood doesn't want to give young people roles, so here we are, with folks in their late 20s and early 30s trying to convince us that they are 16.
Yes, I must say, you don't look a day over 20. No, yes.
But you know what? I'm sure the writers are about to do some nebulous work with the we are not going to mention their ages in the story so everyone can just guess that they are youngish. And now let's talk about Amandla Stenberg and Hollywood's obsession with casting them in roles of book characters that are written to be darker than Amandla Stenberg is in the text. They did it with Rue in Hunger Games, with Star in The Hate You Give. I mean, look at the book cover. And in Hollywood fashion, typical Hollywood fashion, they are doing it again with Children of Blood and Bone. And what makes it even more insidious this time around is the fact that the colorism does play a very crucial role in Amari's story. Because her mother wants Amari actively would have preferred that she be much lighter than she is. And this is where I'm going to go into and give you a bit of Nigerian context. So Nigerians do have a range of skin tones, going from darker to brown skin to lighter skin, but not biracial light skin. And I'm aware that Amari is not dark skinned, but she is darker than what her mother would have preferred. It is what contributes to her self-esteem issues. It is why she's convinced that her mother doesn't like her and is why she's drawn to Zelie, who doesn't approach her with a judgment based off of her skin tone and what she looks like her mother does. We have it in the text. Nehanda pays a compliment to Samara in Children of Blood and Bone, telling her, "Have I mentioned how regal you look today?" And Amara has the thought, I bite my tongue and drain the rest of my tea. The mother says regal. The word lighter hides behind her lips. Like the regal Oloyes who can proudly trace their lineage back to the royal families who first wore Orisha's crown. As I peek at Samara from behind my cup, I am struck by her new soft brown complexion. It was only a few luncheons ago she shared her mother's mahogany coloring. That is Amara. And by extension, the text, alluding to the fact that Samara has bleached her skin to be lighter. And it is something that Queen Nehanda approves of, whilst Amari does not. And so, I think it is very irresponsible for whoever was the casting director for this movie, who clearly has not read the book, to cast a light-skinned biracial actress for this role, knowing fully well the context of colorism in the story and the fact that skin bleaching is a problem that Africans, young Africans, have struggled with and are currently battling with, and to take away the representation of a darker-skinned, brown-skinned African princess is trash. And then there is the pronunciation. See, I have still not watched Emilia Perez because I have friends who are South American and they loathe the movie. They particularly loathe Selena Gomez's pronunciation in the film, and I'm just bracing myself for what would be an absolute cacophony of sounds that Hollywood would try and convince us is the characters attempting to speak Yoruba. Now, I have a full review of Children of Virtue and Vengeance, which is the second book in the trilogy, up on my channel. And I mentioned in that review that the way Tomi Adeyemi butchered, massacred, destroyed, obliterated the Yoruba language needs to be studied. So my hopes were already in the gutter. But then I saw the casting news and I'm over here wondering how Viola Davis, although she is a fantastic actress, is meant to pronounce Etona Agbarayin when Tomi couldn't even be bothered to spell it right. And our publishers could not be bothered to get a sensitivity reader who can speak and write Yoruba fluently to cross-check that she got the spellings right. But to have main characters who are going to have to speak Yoruba and yet cast actors who can speak the language is just... It's given The Brutalists and Adrian Brody being cast for the role, even though his Hungarian is subpar, and so together with Brady Corbett, had the audacity to use AI to fine-tune his pronunciation. Yes, Sebastian Stan is all of us. But even if we say that Viola Davis's Mama Agba has a fairly minor role, Thuso Mbedu, who is to play Zelie, which, by the way, is a whole other kind of worms, considering the tension between Nigerians and South Africans, that it involves the South Africans and the way they treat the Nigerian immigrants and the xenophobia we experience. But I have no interest in going into the optics of that. Thuso Mbedu, who is a fantastic actress, by the way, isn't fluent in Yoruba. And Zelie gets her powers from saying Oriki and making incantations in Yoruba. So I'm bracing myself for what we're about to hear on screen by the time we get to her training arc. Because when she's meant to call the spirits with her Yipada Latowomi, I know I will be in the movies screaming internally with every line. And please don't come writing, well, Hollywood will get them a vocal coach, blah, blah, blah. This is Hollywood. And the studios and powers that be always work with stereotypes. And that is always the mashup Wakandan accent for African stories that they give us, and it is exhausting. What's even more exhausting is that there was an open casting call in Lagos that, these big wigs who got this major roles didn't show up for. Tomi added it to her tweet that there will be more announcements for other characters. Some would be played by Nigerians in a follow-up tweet. Which means that just as with Half of a Yellow Sun, we're about to have Nigerians fill minor roles, serve as background in a story that took a lot of its inspiration from our cities and our gods that, once again, Hollywood gets to profit off of. Hit the like button if you enjoyed anything I had to say. I was able to give you some context. Drop a comment if you want to. Support me on Patreon if you can afford to. Until next time, do remember, obsessing over the things you love? Perfectly valid coping mechanism.